on this misadventure, like Pontius Pilate,
we wash our hands.
we will wash our hands.
Aye. 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 Aye.
Tonight, MPP majority MPs walk out on vote of censure, leaving a one-sided NDC half facing certain defeat in the attempt to remove Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. We are live in Parliament, where a secret ballot is underway. And top story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Voting is underway in Parliament tonight to determine the fate of Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. But with MPP MPs staging a dramatic walkout, the vote of censure is now almost certainly doomed to fail because they lack the two-thirds majority required to have it passed. That knowledge has, however, not stopped the NDC MPs from queuing to vote in a secret ballot. Again today, the Finance Minister was on the floor himself to mount a defense. He claimed, like Jesus Christ, he was simply being crucified.
Well, I tell you, Mr. Speaker, that even if I said I am innocent, they will not believe me. And if I ask for truth and proof, they will not be able to answer that. I have committed no crime. Mr. Speaker, let me just remind us, as we talk about the issue of recklessness, of mismanagement, of conflict of interest, and also remind ourselves of our COVID experience, of our Ukraine war, and Mr. Speaker, ask ourselves the lack of recklessness, the mismanagement, and the lack of these events. I'll ask my colleague who used to be at the ministry, what happened in 2015 for them to run to the IMF? No recklessness, mismanagement, no COVID, no Ukraine war. And Mr. Speaker, President Akufo-Addo's government had to then come and bail them out. And we did so successfully. Mr. Speaker, for the loud and urgent voices seem to have prevailed, but the shouts of censor and censor, I believe, Mr. Speaker, shall forever ring in the ears of those who signed the censure, and their conscience and their souls. Censure will ring as crucify, crucify in their minds.
In a rare show of support, the Attorney General, Godfrey Adami, was on the floor of Parliament himself to defend his colleague cabinet minister and clashed with the co-chair of the committee that probed the censure motion, Dr. Dominic Ayine.
The committee, in the circumstances, sacrificed justice and due process on the altar of expediency and convenience. For me, it's unconstitutional and rendered the whole exercise a nullity. The Speaker, indeed, full particulars to enable the minister to have a proper defense to the action will constitute a setting out of the allegations against him, a setting out of the particulars in support of the allegations, and not what they described as grounds for the allegations. The Speaker, indeed, it's even absurd to describe the allegations as grounds for the allegations. If they are grounds for the allegations, then the question I will ask is what were the allegations themselves? Because there must be the same co-chair. The Speaker, the same co-chair.
Are you coming to debate or are you coming to
Speaker, the same co-chair of the ad hoc committee who misled the committee.
He says that I was in error because Article 23 was interpreted in Awuni and Wayai to apply to quasi-judicial bodies. Mr. Speaker, Parliament is a prototypical political chamber. Mr. Speaker, this is the people, the Chamber of the People's Representatives.
Well, the minority side, the NDC MPs, also had their turn to raise issues about the conduct of the finance minister and his performance. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, on the back of the Attorney General's defense, questioned who in government was speaking for what he describes as the victims of the Attorney General's incompetence.
We have been bombarded by lawyers who have been marshaled by the Honorable Finance Minister, right from committee all the way to today. We just listened to the Honorable Attorney General. The question that I want to pose, Right Honorable Speaker, is that who speaks for the victims of the Honorable Finance Minister? As we speak, there is so much pain, there is so much anguish. People have been impoverished. There is excruciating hardship. Who are the lawyers for those people? As we speak, people's life savings, people's investments are at risk. We have heard the TUC. We have heard the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. We have heard NAGRAT. We have heard TEWU. We have heard the Ghana Medical Association. Who speaks for them? We are public servants. They give us a mandate. They gave the finance minister a mandate to manage this economy well, to put this economy in a good place, so that their life savings, their investments, the work of struggling Ghanaians, of organized labor, business owners who are closing their businesses, some of whom are relocating to Ivory Coast, Togo, and elsewhere. Who speaks for them? Who are their lawyers? So this vote of censure issue, Mr. Speaker, must not be narrowed to mere legal technicalities. Human lives are at stake. Livelihoods are at stake. Businesses are at stake. Millions of Ghanaians are living under excruciating pain because of the bad policies, the mismanagement, the incompetence of this Honorable Finance Minister, who should have left office more than 2 years ago, who actually business remaining in office after all the harm, all the havoc, all the pain, all the destruction that he has caused.
He asked the president who appointed Ken Ofori-Atta to learn from him somehow.
Mr. Speaker, the second preliminary observation I make before I speak to the grounds upon which I intend to proceed relates to a significant development at the committee. Mr. Speaker, I believe that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has something very vital to learn from his cousin, the finance minister. The finance minister appeared before us on day one of our hearing with his lawyer, Gabi Ochredaku. When he came the second day, the third day when he appeared before us, he had quickly changed him. He saw that the way things were, how turbulent it was, how bumpy it was, that was not the kind of counsel he needs. So he quickly changed him and brought lawyer Ado Etia and lawyer Jacob. President Akufo-Addo should learn from his cousin, the finance minister, and change the finance minister. Just as he changed his lawyers when he saw that the legal team led by Gabi Ochidaku on day one was a disaster. He quickly changed it because he knows his position is at stake. Now we are talking about lives. We are talking about livelihoods. We are talking about businesses. We are talking about people's pensions, people's life savings. And you don't want to learn from your cousin, the finance minister, who has showed you the way how to change people who are not performing. Mr. Speaker, I now want to proceed cathedral. The claim by the Honorable Minister for Finance that he used the contingency vote. Mr. Speaker, it will go down in our annals, in the records of this House, as the most ridiculous defense ever mounted. Contingency vote. Mr. Speaker, if you...
We also heard from the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, himself rallying Parliament to join the minority side vote against the finance minister, referencing the finance minister's announcement this week of a debt exchange program.
Further urge members that let's pass a vote of censure, in that is interchangeably used with vote of no confidence. What we have done, I'm sure he himself in his sleep and his conscience know that at least some of the issues we have raised, we are right. And that we have done it for the good of the Ghanaian people. In his conscience, he knows. So, Mr. Speaker, join us to bid him farewell. That he doesn't deserve to implement his unacceptable debt exchange program, which is threatening pensions, threatening financial institutions, threatening jobs. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members,
well, as I speak right now, the voting booth has been set up and the MPs are now queuing to vote. But I must clarify, it's only the NDC MPs who are queuing to vote because, as I explained, the NPP side have walked out already. Let me bring in my parliamentary correspondent who is watching all this unfold for us. Kweku, thanks for joining us. Very quickly, the Attorney General rarely shows up on the floor. In fact, he's never done this before, but he was on the floor today defending the finance minister. At the center of his argument was that the entire process against the finance minister was flawed because it did not allow him, the rules of natural justice were breached, and so it was null and void. How did the minority side respond to that?
So this response was led by the minority leader himself, Haruna Idrisu. He said that the claims that Parliament has not followed due process in admitting and discussing this censure motion is completely false. He proceeds to lay out what he says is the due process Parliament followed. And indeed, the Speaker of Parliament himself followed in admitting the censure motion and making the referral to the committee. And so he sought to disagree with the Attorney General's contention that Parliament is completely on a frolic of its own and conducting an illegality.
A motion, due process, Attorney General, we'll take you through due process. And be reminded that this House, the Parliament of Ghana, so established under Article 93 of this Constitution, is not a quasi-judicial body. And it is not, even as you extended to this committee with your Nemodas rule, it is not the committee of the Honorable K.T. Hammer and Dr. Ayeni is not an adjudicating committee. Mr. Speaker, this House, the Parliament of Ghana, is not the judicial organ of Ghana. It is vested with the powers so imposed on it under Article 93. And Mr. Speaker, I quote for the purpose of the record. It reads, "There shall be a Parliament of Ghana, which shall consist of the number," but it says, "subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the legislative power of Ghana shall be vested in Parliament and shall be exercised in accordance with this Constitution." That is why, Mr. Speaker, in admitting this motion, you are talking, Attorney General, you are talking about due process. And when it comes to matters of this nature, you are not expected to be a partisan minister. You are the learned Attorney General of the Republic of Ghana.
And Kweku, so I'm very curious about how the majority leader responds to this. And then from what I'm hearing, he dramatically stages a walkout. Tell us more.
Indeed, as of this morning, we're picking signals that the majority side were not going to participate in the vote of censure. The majority leader, when it was time to debate, proceeded to debate to say that the grounds on which the minority are coming are completely alien to what the framers may have thought should inure when discussions of censures are being held. And so he proceeded to make his own argument to why he thinks that Ken Ofori-Atta, despite the current economic difficulties, is the right man for the job and should stay in office. But just as he was about to conclude, he started saying that his side was not going to be part of this. His deputy, Afenyomakin, picked a bottle that was just around him, filled with sanitizer, and started spraying the hands of the majority leader to say that we are washing our hands of this, we are not going to be part of it. Then all NPP MPs who were present in the chamber at the time just proceed to file out.
Some of the issues that they have raised are true. They are right. You said some of the issues raised, the finance minister admits, are right. What it means is that some of them are not right. Some of them are untrue. Some of them are falsehoods. And you want us to vote. To vote with you. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and he didn't point out which ones are true and which ones are false.
Tell us.
And you want us to follow you on this misadventure.
Value of the shadow of death.
On this grotesque misadventure.
Value of the shadow.
Mr. Speaker, like Pontius Pilate,
we'll wash our hands.
We will wash our hands. We will wash our hands. We will wash our hands like this.
So with that, the MPP side walked out of the chamber together with the finance minister and the attorney general. The deputy majority leader, Alexander Afenyomakin, thankfully joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Afenyomakin, thank you for your time here on Top Story. We may have lost him, have we? Do we have Mr. Afenyomakin on the line? Yes.
Hi, Evans.
Great to have you. So this was a plan all along, from what I'm hearing. That you leave the chamber at some point.
We never said so.
So the walkout was spontaneous?
Well, if you see an illegality, you have to stay out of it. And if you've prompted severally and you don't seem to see your way clear, you abstain. It's part of the imperatives of the politics of the House.
What's the illegality?
One, the fact that the committee itself did not establish what we call prima facie evidence against the minister. The committee report had no such thing as we call findings. Bear in mind that in the preliminary objection that was raised by us, one of our contentions was to the fact that our constitution has not laid out a procedure for dealing with a motion of censure. And our rules of engagement, that's the standing orders of Parliament, again, does not have the procedure required in carrying out a motion of censure. It's on the basis of that we argue forcefully that there must be a committee in place to establish a prima facie. The same way that in the U.S. congressional system, prima facie evidence is established, which allows for Senate to go into full hearing. By parity of reasoning, our view is that if the committee had established a prima facie that the minister has a case to answer, then the plenary could go the next step. As it turned out to be, the NDC itself, if you listen to Honorable Ayeni, who was their lead person on the committee, and the concluding remarks of Honorable Aaron Idrisu, it's clear that they themselves concede that they did not get the things right. If Haruna Idrisu in his argument says that, they know that it's not everything that they got right, but they know some of the issues are right or whatever, what exactly is he saying? Again, they claim that they are not establishing a quasi-judicial committee and that it's a political process. All we're saying is that by a constitutional imperative under Article 12, a person's right to be heard is very fundamental. And the right to be heard is not only limited.
He has been heard twice.
Merely invited, may you allow me, merely inviting the person, but you serve him with every evidence you rely upon. Again, the forum must be properly constituted with jurisdiction. Dr. Ayeni himself relied on Speaker Jaho's ruling to justify why they rejected the ground of conflict of interest. Yet, they said it's a political cause they were pursuing. If it's a political cause, we cannot be part of it. Again, the minister was clear that he had not committed any act of illegality by making available funds for the National Cathedral. And he provided proof of same. Again, they conceded, yet they would want to make a political statement. So, clearly, all that they are saying is for their political agenda. If indeed their view is that there had been any act of omission, any criminality, the special prosecutor's office is there, they would have to petition the special prosecutor. Parliament has an oversight responsibility, but we cannot also use Parliament as a platform to destroy the image and reputation of fellow Ghanaians.
So that's the parliamentary process. But what about the consensus, at least, around Ken Ofori-Atta's continuous stay in office, which we saw both sides express? Your own members, 98 of them wanted him out. There is a fight now.
No.
There's a fight.
With the issue.
No, I'm asking a fundamental question. There is a fight over the procedure and the process to get him out. Your 98 MPs on your side don't want to do the censure motion route. The NDC prefers that route. But the consensus is he must go. Isn't that more important than bickering over process and procedure and legality and whatnot?
So you are now saying that process and procedure do not matter. That's what you are saying. In an established democracy, rule of natural justice does not require rule of procedure, which will lead to a legitimate expectation, clarity of outcome, certainty, predictability. Is that what you want to invite me to agree with? I'm afraid I'm unable to go on that part with you. Are we not the same Ghanaians who cried over let the blood flow and later accused Rawlings that he denied them of fair trial? Are we not the same Ghanaians who said there should be citizens vetting committee and later turned around and said that destroy our judicial system? Let's follow the rule of law. It may be slow, it may take time, but its outcome become a rule of precedence that will guide. And I would want to subscribe to that.
A word on a procedure as it relates to, I can see on television now the counting of the ballots are underway. Now that you exited, I wonder whether there's even a quorum for this to happen.
They themselves, well, so that again, is an exercise in futility. Whatever that they're doing is odious. And maybe they want to do it for the politics of it. So be it. I don't think that they are really determined to do justice to democracy. They want to achieve a certain political agenda. We can't take that away from them. That's politics.
I mean, thankfully, Dr. Dominic Ayine, who is a co-chair of that committee that looked into the motion, joins us. And you've referenced his own position on some of the key issues and the grounds. I want to get his thoughts on that bit. Dr. Ayine, it has been said that even for yourself, you concede that some of the grounds that the minority side brought before your committee were flawed and did not have basis in law, for which reason 2 of them were struck out. And that then lends credence to the whole point, which again, it was referenced, attributed to you, that this whole thing was a political hatchet job and not one designed to respect the tenets of rule of law, which would give the finance minister, the right to be heard, and properly so, by giving him all the evidence to respond. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't know which provision of the law has been breached by the grounds, articulated in the motion that was filed. If you look at the grounds that were, all of them, the grounds, conform to outstanding orders, except that in the case of ground 1, which dealt with the issue of conflict of interest, we took the view that it should be brought back to plenary because a preliminary objection was raised, and we saw a point of a plausible legal argument being made that excuse me, there's some feedback from your system.
Is it any better?
Hello?
Yeah, is it any better?
Okay, I think it's feeding back. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you clearly from my end.
But as I speak, I hear myself very loudly in my own ear, and it's not very comfortable.
Is there a radio anywhere close?
No, there's no radio. I just spoke to City FM, and it wasn't like this.
Okay, well, I mean, this is very clear from my end. Let's see if we can get it fixed. It's
issue that was raised related to the constitutionality of the committee examining this issue of conflict of interest. All right. And we saw that there was a plausible legal argument to be made because in terms of Article 103, Clause 3 of the Constitution, okay, Parliament has the power to investigate or inquire into the activities of ministries. Now, if a minister hires a private sector company to do work for his ministry, okay, that is an activity of the ministry. Okay, so we were assuming that the committee's powers emanated directly from Article 103.3 of the Constitution. And that is why we took, the position that we can investigate that matter. Somehow, the challenge was raised, by his lawyer, that it is only SRAJ that can deal with that matter. Okay? After back and forth between us and the lawyers of the Honorable Finance Minister, we decided that the matter be referred to plenary for decision. We did not strike out any ground because, as far as we are concerned, the committee has no power whatsoever to strike out the grounds of a motion that has been referred to it by Mr. Speaker. Okay, in terms of parliamentary procedure, even where you want to, amend a motion that has been filed by another member, you are supposed to do so by formally bringing another motion for amendment. So there's no way that a committee that has been seized with jurisdiction with respect to a motion can go and strike out the grounds of the motion. So no ground was struck out. So it is, miscommunication on the part of the MPP, okay, and it's, they are communicators, basically saying that the grounds were struck out. Then no ground was struck out. In the case of ground 3, relating to illegal payment, okay, explanations were given that showed that it was the GMP, it was Carlo that made the payment into the offshore account. Okay, as a fact-finding committee, there is no way we would have made that would have found that evidence and still call upon the finance minister to come and answer questions.
So you were satisfied
and that is
with
why
that?
We said
you were satisfied with that finding?
We were satisfied with that point. So there was no striking out whatsoever. I don't see how anybody can be miscommunicating to Ghanaians that we struck out two of the grounds because they had no basis. No ground was struck out. In fact, on the contrary, there was evidence that was led, for instance, in respect of the conflict of interest, that over 159 million Ghana cedis had been paid to companies affiliated to the finance minister. So what are we talking about?
But you've said also that this process is a political process. Do you then agree then with the NPP side if they say they can then not join you to pursue this political agenda against one of their own?
Well, Parliament as a whole pursues political agendas all the time. Our budget, which we have just approved, though we voted against the budget when the voice vote was called. They voted for it when the voice vote was called. All right? The Speaker called the vote in their favor. That is a political agenda. Okay? As I said on the floor of Parliament, Parliament is the prototypical political chamber. And so all we do here is politics. For anybody to think that we are doing something else, okay, is totally wrong. It's totally, against the grain of what the Constitution, has assigned us to do. We are the people's representatives, and we are here to do politics, as a result of which policies and programs and projects of government, okay, may be scrutinized, to enhance the welfare of the people of this country. So we are doing politics. Nobody should deceive themselves that Parliament engages in any other enterprise apart from politics.
As you speak right now, counting of the ballots I can see is underway. You concede now this is doomed to fail.
I don't think that it is doomed to fail just because it does not reach the constitutional threshold of 2/3 majority of all the members of Parliament. All right? We are still making a point to the people of this country, okay, that the original intention behind the motion is being carried through to the end.
But in the end, your objective for starting this was to remove the finance minister. That wouldn't happen.
No, it certainly wouldn't happen. But I must add that even if we got the 2/3, it would not have still assured that the finance minister would have been removed, because the president still has the discretion whether or not to remove him under the Constitution.
But Mr. Fanyo-Marking, he makes a bigger point, that yes, they may fail to remove the finance minister because they don't have the numbers, but they would have made a point that many Ghanaians agree with, that the finance minister should go. They would certainly, if you speak to most people, be on the right side of public opinion on this.
Ivan, listen, I will not take anything away from that point. Like I said, it is their right in this political activism that we are all engaged in. And that is the path they have chosen. So be it. However, let's talk a little bit of law. Mr. Yeni, Dr. Yeni is a well-respected lawyer. And when you are mixing politics and law, that is the cul-de-sac you meet. How on earth can a committee established to inquire into a matter claim that it is unable to strike down a ground merely because it does not have the capacity to do so, and it is making that referral to plenary? You actually came to a conclusion that you don't have jurisdiction. And he himself, in his argument, referred to Honorable Do Ajaho's ruling to say that a similar matter had been brought to Parliament in 2015, 2016. And the Speaker said it was a matter under Article 287, which borders on conflict of interest, which matter should be dealt with by strikes. So Parliament jurisdiction was ousted by virtue of that constitutional imperative. Question is, what has changed? And he himself relied on that decision to justify why the committee could not pursue the issue of conflict of interest. So why is he, in bad faith, creating a certain impression that, they had no problem with it? Like I said earlier, it is all part of their politics, and we'll leave it at that.
Ms. Ayin, a quick reaction to that.
To me, it's by reason only of the fact that, I'm making a point about why we decided to refer the matter to plenary. Okay? I have never said that the committee definitely had jurisdiction. What I said was that in the circumstance in which the committee found itself, it was proper for us to take the matter back to plenary. Because after all, Joe Ajaho's ruling in September 2016 was a ruling that was taken because the matter came before plenary. And in this case, you are using the language of striking out. The committee never struck out any ground because we did not have the power, I insist, to strike out any ground.
I'm grateful, Dr. Dominic Ayine, and for joining us with your thoughts on this. And I want to take you to Parliament now, where the Speaker of Parliament is now presiding and deciding the outcome of this very controversial vote of censure. Listen to the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bawe.
So the first vote is to be taken on the motion number 21, which will be a voice vote. Those in favor of the motion number 21 on the order paper at page 16, say aye. Aye. Those against, say no. The ayes have it. The vote is agreed upon. So the report of the committee, that is the ad hoc committee, has accordingly been adopted. I now put the question on the motion that was moved by the minority leader and seconded by the minority chief whip, which is what resolved in the resolution. And so the resolution reads as follows. Whereas by the provisions of Article 82 of the Constitution and Orders 106 and 108 of the Standing Orders of Parliament, this House hereby resolves as follows. To pass a vote of censure on the minister responsible for finance. Those in favor after the secret vote is 136. Those against, 0. Abstentions, 0. Now, in accordance with Article 82(1), which reads, Parliament may, by a resolution supported by the votes of not less than 2/3 of all the members of Parliament, pass a vote of censure on a Minister of State. Following the terms of Article 82(1), the vote is accordingly lost.
So that's a judgment there, finally been delivered after weeks of controversy, back and forth, a committee hearing that we've not seen before, and back and forth bickering between minority and majority side. The speaker, you just heard, delivered that verdict. That vote is lost. 136 voted yes, remove him. 0 against. My parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante, is on the telephone line right now. Kweku, from everything we've heard now, this is done, isn't it?
This is done, and the minority are just filing out. Ahmed Ibrahim is the minority speaker. Briefly, to get what your reaction is. Is this over for you?
It's still not. At least we've done what Ghanaians expected Parliament to do. They gave us 137. One of us is already incapable of taking part in the vote. So we're 136. And we need 183. For the second time, the governing party, the leader of the house has run away from the house. And when the landlord is running from the house, it tells you that there's fire in the place. So clearly, what Ghanaians expected of us is what we have done. But you yourself, you saw it for yourself. How come that a landlord will be running away from his own house? Are you going to take any more further steps against the finance minister? The finance minister has seen that with the numbers, he has lost the confidence from the minority. And if he knows that 98 of his side are also of the same view. Today, the 98, most of them were not in the chamber. The 50-something who were in the chamber also ran away. And that is how come that the entire majority group had to run away from the chamber. So we could not garner the 183. But I think, based on this, the finance minister will be getting a very hostile house. And going forward, I think the international community, the business community, the party itself must advise themselves.
Ahmed Ibrahim is the minority, deputy minority.
Now, Kweku, is Ahmed Ibrahim still with you?
He's walking away, but I can try and get him back.
We need to get. Yes, I need to get clarity. So this, in effect, is a vote of no confidence from your side against the finance minister, and overwhelmingly, 136. All of you say you don't have confidence in him. Going forward, will you entertain the finance minister's business in the house?
We have so many strategies of those as members of parliament to roll out. And this clearly tells you that everything that the finance minister brings to the house will have to be thoroughly scrutinized.
Yeah, but if you say thoroughly scrutinized, which means you are entertaining him, you believe that there's something there you need to scrutinize. As we heard, even from the MPP side, they will not do business at all. They will leave because they don't have confidence in him. What's the approach here? Clarify that.
In somebody, how can you cooperate with that person? So this is a non-cooperation path that we have started with the finance minister, and we'll proceed on that.
Clarify. Did you say
Ahmed Ibrahim is walking away? He says they have some urgent business to go and deal with. But we'll try and get some more reaction from MPs, minority MPs who have just filed out now. They say that what they've just started is a part of non-cooperation. They are not going to cooperate with the Minister for Finance. Dr. Kwabena Donko is here. This is Joy FM. I mean, your colleagues did not support you. Your relentless fight to get the minister out has lost. What do you make of what you've seen so far today?
Well, people are putting their party interest before the national interest. Ken Ofori-Atta, unfortunately, has proven beyond every doubt that he's a failure. He is incompetent as a finance minister. He has led this country into the doldrums. And the minimum he can do for country, for the president, and for the voter is to resign.
Well, you've not succeeded in getting him out through a vote of censure. He has insisted. The president says he's an excellent minister. You were on a frolic of your own, and the majority refused to join you. You've lost it. You move on.
No, well, the nation state moves on. But Ken Ofori-Atta as a minister is the most disastrous finance minister this country has ever had. I mean, it's improving. He took this country from a position of being the rising star to the laughing stock of international finance. And well, I'm not in leadership. Speaking for myself, I think he is a disappointment even to some of us who were his admirers. He's a disappointment to intellectual acumen. It's a disappointment to the pensioners of this country, the people who depend on pension funds, the vulnerable of this society. Ken Ofori-Atta, unfortunately, is picking their pockets.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kobredonko. So, Evans, that is the mood in the House. It wasn't very jubilant when the minority MPs were filing out from the chamber. Very quiet. They all walked through the alley and the veranda and just went straight to their offices. Very few willing to speak. But you heard there, when the Speaker declared that the motion is lost, later heard from the minority leader, Ofori-Atta, who said he would have wished that his NPP colleagues would have joined them to make history. That history has been postponed, at least not for now. And Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta gets to continue his job, at least without censure motion hanging around his neck. He still has to contend, though, with the 98 NPP MPs who have said they would allow him deal with the budget, later deal with the IMF talks, and then the president would have to sack him. How long live politically does Ken Ofori-Atta have? That will be decided in the future, Evan.
And Kweku, walk us through the numbers again at the end of voting.
So 136 MPs who are on the floor voted for the censure motion. 136. There were 0 votes against the motion, and there were also 0 abstentions. So the motion is lost because the constitutional threshold is 2/3 of all 275 MPs. That is 183. The minority needed 47 votes in addition to the 136 they were able to cast on the floor today. They did not get it because they simply could not have it from their colleagues in the majority. So 136 for the censure motion, 0 against, 0 abstention, largely due to the majority side boycotting and walking out on the voting on the motion of censure.
Thank you very much, Kweku. And that's it. If you're just joining us, that vote of censure has been lost in Parliament because the minority side were unable to get all they needed. 183 votes is what they needed, but they could only muster 136. In effect, they brought all their members to the floor. Minus James Echikwesi, who of course has a legal blockade, which means he cannot go to the House to participate. But that failed because of the walkout of the minority of the NDC, of the MPP MPs from the House. I want to bring in private legal practitioner Nia de Klerk, who joins us on the telephone line right now. Robert Nia de Klerk, thank you for your time here on Newsnight. A lot has been said today about the legality of this entire process. The Attorney General rarely does show up on the floor, but today he was on the floor defending his colleague cabinet minister, and the central theme of his argument was that the process is flawed and so should not even be entertained, null ab initio, as you guys say. You agree with him?
Not exactly, and not entirely. Good evening to you, Evans, and good evening to your listeners. Thank you for the opportunity. In the first place, I think that there has become some sort of a tradition where we are over-lawyering Parliament. When I say that, I mean that every single time a lot of things okay, sorry, Evans. I hear myself when I speak, so it's like listening to myself every time I speak. But I think I will try and go ahead with that.
I sincerely apologize. We had that before. I honestly can't figure out what it is because on this side it sounds pretty clear. Try for me. Thank you very much, Robert.
Okay, so I'll proceed by taking the phone away from my ear. And if you interject, I hope I can hear that. So just not to waste too much time. I am saying that I'm a lawyer too, as you know. There seems to be the belief and tendency and practice that is developing, which is giving the impression that Parliament is a court of law. Parliament is not a court of law. And Parliament does not necessarily have to apply the principles that we know when we go to court. What do I mean? These are different coordinate branches of government. They are different. When we go to court, you have a certain process. You have rules of court you have to follow. There are dates and times and timelines, etc., that you must do. When we go to parliament, you must go through a different process. And in fact, the constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, actually says that parliament should, regulate its proceedings by some procedures and all of that. And I've heard a lot of articles of the constitution quoted all along today, a lot of inapplicable ones just to make a certain point. We must not lose focus. When the constitution says clearly in Article 115, and listen to this, Evans, that there shall be freedom of speech, debate, and proceedings in Parliament, and that freedom shall not be impeached or questioned in any court or place out of Parliament. My emphasis here is on the proceedings. Parliament shall regulate its proceedings. But look, we are dealing with an Article 82 situation. I totally agree. That Article 82 situation is about vote of censure. That vote of censure has what we should do spelled out by the Constitution. It's the supreme law of the land. The proceedings of Parliament, I'm not suggesting trump the Constitution. Absolutely not. The Constitution remains supreme at all times. But in that Article 82 scenario, the Constitution is clear as to what we should do and the process that we must follow. Parliament then goes through its rules and decides that this is the manner in which they will go through it. As long as they do not breach the Constitution, that is fine. When we begin with raising issues about a certain process which is required, and I heard a bit of the Attorney General, in fact, you sent it to him, he makes some very fantastic points. I agree that we must hear the other side, the right to be heard must be exercised and all of that, and clearly. But the argument must not be made and the impression must not be created that whenever we are in Parliament, there are certain rules that we see in court on a regular basis, and those are the rules that we are applying. That is not true. Because the Constitution accepts and agrees that when Parliament meets as a chamber and is doing its work, which is refereed by the Speaker, it is not a body of judges and lawyers that are at play. It is that chamber, a political one, we have, where the discussions, the issues, the proceedings, the processes are being done. But the larger problem that we have is that with respect to this particular vote of censure, we do not have any procedure which has been spelled out by Parliament. So that in itself already threw us into some sort of a problem where we were struggling to figure things out. So I can understand that the debate and the views and all the things that have been expressed so far seem to be at odds. That's fine, that's well and good. But I don't want the point to be lost on all of us, that when we are in Parliament, we are not in a court of law. Assume that, just for the sake of argument, that the people that sat in Parliament, including the Speaker, etc., and all of that, were not lawyers. Are you saying that we will be quoting with such speed all the things that we say that we see in court when things happen? That is not the point. So I agree with the Attorney General. There are certain principles that are fundamental. You must hear me. The Constitution says you hear, you was heard, and all of that. But I'm saying that has a limit. When we get to Parliament, the procedure of Parliament, the proceedings of Parliament are governed by what Parliament sets out. And that is the extent of what happens. And if the Parliament falls foul of the Constitution in that process, then there's a way to fix it as laid out by the
I mean, Robert, very quickly, another controversial point that has been made is this whole entire process is more political than legal. You agree with that?
Well, I have heard the arguments made on your thing, on your network and other places that the U.S. system, I'm answering you, please. The U.S. system allows certain things and then you can have a certain number of votes, etc. Let's clarify something. The U.S. system is a federal system. The U.S. has two houses. The House, with respect to a certain constitutional provision for censure. The Senate, there's no clear constitutional provision for that censure. Look, if you're not familiar with the way the U.S. constitutional design is, I think that sometimes you should stay away from it. All right? So there are ways in which those things are done and how they work. A censure is not the same as impeachment. Under U.S. law, the impeachment process, which is that the lower house must then have a simple majority, which sends you up to the Senate, for which we must have a three-quarter. It's a different process. And a lot of times they do that with respect to their members and all of that. And then in America, they describe it more as a slap on the wrist, etc. This is a bush of censure. Same thing. Look, if today the NDC members had managed to get the 183 that they needed, it still doesn't mean Ken Ofori-Atta is leaving office. It's still up to the president.
Yeah.
But of course, psychologically, people don't want that to happen, and I can understand why his party will rally to his defense and do the best they can to frustrate the process. So, with respect to that, the point is that yes, it's both legal, constitutional, and political. What do I mean? In our case, we have the clear constitutional provision with respect to the vote of censure. That is a legal constitutional provision, so that's law. The process, you realize that the Constitution is not elaborate. And the Constitution recognizes that this is an activity within another arm of government. And therefore does not say refer to the rules of court or X or Y or Z, but then permits through 115 that the Parliament will have its own rules and processes to do that which you now call political. That which is political is not necessarily mutually exclusive with that which is legal. So in our situation, it is at first a legal matter because it's a constitutional provision, and then in process, a political situation because it has to go through Parliament and it's laid down rules and how it has done it. Rules that we do not have yet.
Well,
so there's that mix. There's that mix.
Robert, I'm grateful. Robert Nia de Klerk is a legal practitioner. Really, history was made today. This is the first time we've seen the process like this, a censure motion, exhausted till its very end. Of course, the proponents lost, but history has been made. A man who was once a chair of Parliament's Legal Constitutional Affairs Committee and a student of parliamentary studies and all joins us on the telephone line right now for quick thoughts on the day when we were making history on this matter. Inusa Fuseni, I'm grateful for your time here on Newsnight. Your quick thoughts on the outcome of this process. Happy with the way it turned out?
Evans, good evening, and thank you for having me. I think today I have been better educated. I've enjoyed the process. I'm convinced that Ken ought to go. The minority clearly stated in their arguments the breaches of the Public Financial Management Act, and any minister who has sworn to uphold the laws of the country but breaches the laws of the country with impunity ought to go. I mean, there's no negotiation on that. We are also it was clearly demonstrated that his activities and actions at the ministry is the reason why we are where we are. And you could see clearly during the debate, the majority were not able to counter meaningfully the allegations raised against Ken Ofori-Atta. What they sought to do was to hide behind technicalities.
This is great for democracy, right? I mean, what is the biggest advantage of this process for our democracy going forward? Just quickly.
The biggest advantage is that ministers, like the minority leader said, ministers of state now know that they can be held before Parliament on the motion of censure. And so any minister presently serving government or ministers in a future government will act with the knowledge that they can be held before Parliament.
Inusa Fuseni, thank you very much. What's your own verdict on the process tonight? It's ended. The finance minister lives on in his position because the NDC side failed to get the numbers they require, 183 to get him out. 055-11-11997. Still ahead, Ghana Medical Association clashes with Chamber of Corporate Trustees over its decision to negotiate rather than outrightly reject the inclusion of pension funds in government's debt exchange program.
I think our initial position was total reject, but we are amenable to renegotiating the terms.
I beg to differ from the position held by the chamber. I think the position should be clear. Ghana Medical Association stands by its position that we don't accept this, and I'm sure that the other labor unions would hold the same view as